They've been man's best friend for over 30,000 years. There's something really special about the bond a person can have with their dog.
Our motto at Rescue 22 is saving two at a time. We're not only saving a dog, but we're also saving a veteran's life.
We're giving them a second chance. We're giving the veterans a second chance. Who doesn't love a dog, right?
America is at war.
Hi, my name is John Devine. I'm one of the founders of Rescue 22 Foundation, currently the president. I'm a former Navy SEAL and current owner of Divine Canines and dog trainer. I entered service in 2004, just like a lot of people in my generation. When I saw 9/11, that pretty much confirmed what I was going to be doing with my life. I joined the Navy. I made it through training, became a SEAL. I went through, breacher school, JTAC school, and held a number of different positions within my different platoons. I didn't know the SEALs had dogs. I wanted to be a Navy SEAL sniper, just like every other person joining the SEAL teams probably. I had a friend of mine that ended up there, and I was asking him about it. One, it was a guaranteed ticket to go to Afghanistan, and that every single dog team was going to the show. And at the time, not every single SEAL platoon was going to Afghanistan. I saw friends that were coming back maimed, injured, or not coming back at all due to IEDs. We're getting into gunfights and bad things can happen, but the IED threat was so huge that I knew I wanted to do something to keep my friends coming home. And the dogs were our best chance of doing that. I knew that if I ever had the opportunity to get a chance to do that, that's something I wanted to do. A directive came out and they wanted to expand the dog teams by about 100%, like instantly. So they had my name on a list because I already had been inquiring about going there, and I was actually turned down. All the slots were filled. They ended up going down this list, and I was called up to my senior chief's office, and he asked me if I wanted to go to the dog teams. I was like, well, senior chief, how long do I have to think about this? And he's like, about 10 seconds, because if not, I have to go down the list and find someone else. So I pretty much had to make a leap of faith right then and there, and by the next morning, I was getting bit by about 12 different dogs. I did a couple deployments with my dog. I was with the same dog the entire time. One dog who actually made it through the pipeline that I was paired up with, trained from pretty much him being an 8-month-old puppy to him being a fully mission-capable multi-purpose canine in the SEAL teams. I struggled, just like a lot of veterans. I think when I got out, I didn't really know what to do. The Navy took my dog away from me and put him right back to work into the pipeline, getting ready to deploy. I had to find a new purpose, so I went and I adopted a dog that had a lot of behavioral issues, started struggling through those issues and teaching myself how to fix these issues. And a lot of the people in the SEAL teams remembered me as the dog guy, had dogs at home, and they'd be asking me for advice. And some of these questions they'd ask me, I didn't know the answer. So I made it like my mission to figure out how to fix these problems that people were having. Almost by mistake again, I started becoming a dog trainer, and it eventually grew to such a size that I couldn't control it anymore. Started training dogs in my garage in San Diego. I started having friends come to me that were either other SEALs or SEALs that were getting out and were already out, veterans, some that were still active duty, that were really struggling. A lot of them were struggling with a lot of TBI issues and PTSD. And they were asking if I could help them get a service dog. And at the time, I knew about service dogs, but I wasn't really an expert service dog trainer by any means or stretch of the imagination. But I really, really wanted to help them. And the only way that I knew how to help was by training a dog. And so the first service dog I just trained because I wanted to do it, and I just wanted to help. But then I realized how much time and energy this takes, and that if I trained 2 more service dogs, I could do it, but then I would just be like broke and I wouldn't be able to function anymore. So it wasn't until I teamed up with one of the other founders of Rescue 22. We kind of conceptualized this plan of what if we could turn this into something that's sustainable and something that we could actually replicate and actually help more people, because we can't do it alone. And eventually we ended up linking up with Angela. And she really was the glue that put this plan together to form Rescue 22. Rescue 22's mission is to save veterans through the use of a service dog. We're training task-trained service dogs for multiple different disabilities. And we're also rescuing dogs. So we're taking dogs that are either shelter dogs or rescue dogs or unused or repurposed working dogs and training them and placing them with veterans in need. And so we're saving 2 at a time.
Seats. Good boy. I am a former Army Ranger from the 75th Ranger Regiment. I was in 3rd Ranger Battalion, and I am right now the Vice President of the Rescue 22 Foundation. I did 14 total deployments. I saw my fair share of combat and gunfights and had a plan. 5 years after exiting service, things started to become very arduous and started to unravel pretty fast. I had an individual basically look at me in my face and tell me, "You're a terrible husband, you're a terrible father." And they said, "You'd be better off dead." Said nothing. I just quietly walked into the bathroom, grabbed every single medication that the VA prescribed me at the time, and walked out to the East Jetty Pass here in Fort Walton and took every one of those pills. I looked up at the stars that night and waited. And in the last moments, pure and utter regret for that decision, pure terror, because I felt my body shutting down. Obviously that round was sent and there's nothing I could do. I woke up to a 82nd Airborne cop sternum rubbing me. And he was like, "You good?" We sat there for about 2 hours talking, and he begged me to go get help. And I promised him that I would. If that cop's out there and remembers me, reach out. Been looking for him for years. Went to the VA, went to a counselor. They were prescribing me a lot of medication, at which point I didn't want to take anymore. And I decided to focus my life back into be of service to others, to prevent what had happened to me to happen to others. So I was literally living in my Scion TC underneath the bridge. And then they said, "You gotta take a service dog." So that kind of motivated me to start working even more, try to get a place. And when I called the number, they basically wanted to charge me a large amount of money to get a service dog. And obviously I didn't have that kind of liquid cash. That was kind of out of the question. Called my buddy, I'm sitting at work. He's like, "You're kidding. We just got a nonprofit started for this very thing yesterday." I immediately got into the Rescue 22 pipeline. 1 month from that day, based on my service-connected disability and what the dog was required, I was able to get a dog. I didn't know that I needed it. It was just an option in my brain. It was like, oh, I'm getting a dog. And the bond, the relationship that was built in that process sparked something in me. I mean, it literally changed my chemical makeup. I would love to see a scientific study on that because it's just astounding how much my life changed physically and mentally. And I immediately just came thoroughly obsessed with dog training. I was going every single weekend down to the facility down there to learn about dog training and ended up getting a job working as a dog handler for doing some executive protection, and then started working with the Department of Homeland Security and a few other organizations as a handler. It was a hobby turned into a full-time gig. And 2 years into that process, I became a full-time dog trainer, and we built where we're sitting at now, which is one of the headquarters locations for Rescue 22.
So a lot of these dogs are coming from bad situations, and that there's such an overpopulation problem at a lot of these rescues and shelters. There's a number of dogs that were maybe days away from being put down. I have one dog in my facility that was going to be put down that day if we didn't pull it. These dogs, they just needed a second chance and a job and a purpose, just like people. Every person needs a purpose, every dog needs a purpose.
My name is Rebecca Dabney, and I was a police canine handler for 9 years and police officer and corporal in South San Francisco for 13 years total. And now I am a professional dog trainer. Beginning of the process, we'll have an interview with the veteran to kind of figure out what their specific needs are. It's not as simple as sit or down or something like that. It's a lot more complicated. For example, I trained Hazel. She stayed at my house with me. And one of the reasons for that was he needed nightmare interruptions. I had to first teach her the task of the interruption and like how to pick up on that. And then I also had to teach her that just because I was like laying down or snoring or like doing normal sleep things, that wasn't the time to go interrupt, right? So like I had to kind of like train the response, but also the opposite of the response. With veterans, a lot of them like having dogs that are familiar to them from the military, right? So like those shepherds, the Malinois, like to them that kind of feels like home a little bit, especially if they worked with them overseas or whatever. I really love seeing dogs have a purpose and like having a fulfillment. Like for the dog's sake, we're taking these dogs that otherwise, may end up being euthanized or may end up in a who knows what kind of home. There's a few of the dogs. Loki, for example, was on the euthanasia list before he came to us. A lot of the dogs are shelter dogs, so or in rescues somewhere, or they're just donated to us. We're giving them a purpose as well as, the veterans.
My name is Jonathan Belton. I was served in the Marine Corps from January 2003 to September 2010. I served as a parachute rigger, and then I'm currently the Corporate Relations Manager, Secretary, and Board Member at Rescue 22 Foundation. I was in a parachute accident and fractured 4 vertebrae and ruptured my L5S1, so I've had 4 spine surgeries. So he's a mobility dog for me. I can use him to help pull me up. Service dogs, it's not about the quantity on how many you push out as an organization. It's the quality of the dog that you're delivering to the veteran, right? So you don't need that dog coming back every 3 months for refresher training because the dog is acting out or has become reactive to other dogs. You want a dog that when it's delivered, it complements your life, doesn't create that added stress. It's been a breath of fresh air having him and him being fully task trained for me.
To some of these veterans, a dog is really a second lease on life. They're in dire straits, or their lives are very, very, very hard, very difficult. Some of the most fulfilling things that I do is the integration process of these dogs, because I get to see the impact that these dogs are making on these veterans' lives.
My name's Garland Mason. Yes. I served in the Army a little over 20 years. I was a parachute rigger, and then transitioned to an Army chaplain and finished out my career as a chaplain. I was medically retired for PTSD. Currently, I'm involved with law enforcement in northern Alabama. As the war on terror was starting and we had, we were actively confronting the enemies of our country on the field of battle. Sensed a calling and a focus really more in that area of my life. And along about that time too, my brother was killed in Iraq. A lot of things kind of coalesced and came together that pushed me in that direction. I did my 2 deployments to Iraq at the age of 2nd. I was medically retired for PTSD. For me, things just started coming apart in my life. Yeah, you just start fraying at the ends. It's hard to hold everything together. And really, I was the last person to ask for help. I have a daughter that works in the working dog community, and she was familiar with R22. Mentioned one day, hey Dad, maybe you ought to consider getting a service dog. I was kind of at the point where I'll take any help I can get. I was approved and accepted, and they gave me this guy here, Sabo, fantastic dog. Cannot speak highly enough of this guy. Great personality, great temperament. He's the man.
My name is Phil Sussman. I spent 10 years in the Army. These days, I am a yoga instructor, a psychedelic integration coach, and a stay-at-home dad to my 3 daughters. I joined the Army a little later in life, so I was in my late 20s when I commissioned in the Army. I wanted to eventually go overseas and fight terrorism like every young boy, so I wanted to make my way to special operations from the start. So I started in the Cav. I was a scout. I lost a really good friend after that deployment, my senior scout, which put me in a pretty rough place mentally. I broke my back in 2015. I joined special operations in 2016. I deployed twice, once to Jordan and to Syria. I had a couple tough deployments and a couple tough events in between those deployments characterized my military career. Medical retirement, transition, brutal, absolutely disgustingly hard. And I struggled a lot. I applied for Hazel about 6 months before I got out, and I was still waiting for her. There was a night where it was the hardest night of my life. I didn't want to live anymore. 2 nonprofits essentially saved my life on the other side. But one of those was Rescue 22. I felt broken. I couldn't stand up on my own. I couldn't get out of bed on my own. Just being in the military community, I'd seen other people with service dogs and thought it might be, of use to me. And it was kind of one of the few things that I actually reached out or wanted to reach out for help. Just dropped an application, honestly thinking that it wouldn't happen, thinking that I wouldn't get a dog. That told them, what I was dealing with, and they reached out to me. I think a couple months after I applied, Angela reached out and she said, "Hey Phil, I'd like to just interview you and see if this is a good fit." I remember feeling like I wanted to cry when she told me that I was going to get a dog, and 10 months later I had Hazel, providing me this unconditional love and support. And even on my bad days, she keeps coming back and coming back and coming back and licking my face and standing there ready for me to get up from the ground or get up from a chair to brace. She has become a part of me. She has become, an invaluable, a priceless part of my life. She's like a child. I can't imagine being without her.
My name is Jordan Leitch. I served 7 years in the Marine Corps, 4 years in the infantry, and then 3 years as a combat instructor. Afghanistan sucks. That deployment was rough on a lot of guys. I actually re-enlisted while I was in Afghanistan and wanted to help train the future generation of infantry Marines, and became a combat instructor at ITB West. Got out after 3 years of doing that. Being a combat instructor takes a huge toll on your body. You're up and down the mountains in Camp Pendleton and packs, and we're weighing our packs in front of students to show we have 15 to 30 pounds more weight than what they're carrying, and we're running up and down lines of students to make sure they're not falling out. I had leg damage, both nerve damage and muscular damage while I was in. Turns out I had a fairly uncommon condition called popliteal artery entrapment, where the muscle in my legs improperly healed and created a vice grip effect on my arteries. They did what they considered a simple surgery back in January of 2017. Turns out when you remove a mass like your calf, and then reroute arteries, change vascular structure and muscular structure, and put everything back together, it's not a simple surgery. Within the first 3 weeks, my leg had started growing in size. My leg was physically starting to die while still attached to my body. Fast forward 10 months to when I end up having a medically necessary amputation of my left leg because of the surgery. So the VA had messed up a surgery, I became an amputee, and it kind of propelled my life into a direction that I never foresaw it going. I hit my lowest points, but I was desperate. I need to do something. I've always had a connection with dogs, and I just knew a service dog was the right route that I needed to go. I had posted a video on Instagram asking for anyone's help if they knew of an organization that these are the things that I have, but I also have a dog at home, and who would be willing to work with me. And the amount of people who said Rescue 22 Foundation blew my mind. And then I actually got reached out to by the staff at Rescue 22 Foundation saying, "Hey, we want to help you." Emotions were high. I got the call a month prior to Tier getting dropped off, and got sent some pictures. This is him. And visually seeing holy shit, this is it. This is my service dog. Will, who was with Rescue 22, was a lead trainer on him, and he drives him out in his transit van, and we did training throughout that day. He was there the second day, and he's like, "You know what?" He's like I've been to some people where I've been at their house for 2 weeks, and he's just like, "You're good." And I'm like, "What do you mean I'm good?" And he's like, "You guys have a bond already that speaks for itself." He was trained for body pressure therapy to help with both anxiety and with phantom limb pain, where he would lay on my residual limb, bracing to be able to stand up, retrieving items off the grounds. I could not imagine a better service dog. But Rescue 22, providing a service dog that's trained to this level at no cost to a veteran, I'd never be able to afford a dog like Tyr if I'm looking to do the training on my own and pay for it out of pocket. And then at the same time, like, you come with the reassurance of the organization itself. It's not like I got the service dog and I had no contact with the organization after. You know, they call and they check in on us and they bring me out to do things like this.
There's a couple key things that make us and separate us from a lot of other nonprofits. One, 95 cents from every dollar that we raise goes to the training of these dogs, which in essence goes to the veteran. And we're all volunteers. We all have full-time jobs, we have families. This is a passion of ours. Without those supports, we can't keep the lights on. Without people believing in what we're doing, we can't continue to go to events, put on events, travel and showcase what these dogs are capable of doing, go and find dogs, hire trainers, pay for the dog's food, pay for the dog's vet bills. It's a large umbrella of how important these sponsorships and donations are. Individuals can donate by going on our website, selecting like a monthly donation of $10. That helps. They can do lump sum donations, or even just buying some of the shirts that we have for sale on our website, things like that, because all those proceeds go back to us.
Dogs have always been an integral part of the military community. You know, I worked with a lot of dogs overseas, and if you walk in the office here at Black Rifle, there are dogs absolutely everywhere. And so working with an organization like Rescue 22 is super important to us because it provides us the opportunity to kind of allow people to get specialized treatment that is outside of traditional care. Every nonprofit that Black Rifle looks to work with is always about, at least from my perspective, individualized care for veterans, and Rescue 22 does exactly that. So you're actually saving a dog's life and providing it a quality home. And then not only that, but providing the veteran companionship. Rescue 22 is best in class. Their trainers are absolutely amazing. There's veterans over there, so they understand the community. And so for us, it just makes sense to work with them.
One of the questions we often get asked is how many dogs we've placed with veterans. And currently, it's around 50. When we place the dogs with the veteran, it's a lifetime commitment for that dog. And, you know, unfortunately, we know dogs don't live forever. At the end of that dog's service life, we would train a new service dog for that veteran. I get to see a veteran say, I can't believe I can walk without a wheelchair for the first time. I get to see a wheelchair-bound veteran able to function more independently. This is something that I kind of correlate to my SEAL career. And so getting a job to look out for my brothers and sisters in the veteran community, it gives me a chance to give back. If you can just help just one person, that's a good start.
Yeah, the do not pet a service dog. First of all, it's hard because sometimes it makes the handler feel guilty if they say no. But I have to explain to people that she is here to be in tune with me. She is here. If I need her in a moment, she needs to be there. If she's looking off somewhere else, she's not helping me. She is considered a medical device. You know, would you ask to sit in someone's wheelchair? Would you ask to use their cane? You know, she's the same way. She's considered legally a medically device for me, and she's here for me. And if I let everyone pet her, she fails to be that device because she'll always be looking out for affection when I need to be that source of love and affection and sustenance for her.